BCC meeting, April 14th. If we can get a roll call, Madam Clerk.
Chair Roybal, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, Chair Roybal?
Here.
I can't hear you.
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Hanson?
I'm trying to unmute. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm here.
Commissioner Hamilton?
Here.
Commissioner Garcia? Commissioner Garcia? Mr. Chair, could I go ahead and...
Yeah, go ahead and move on to the next.
Commissioner Moreno?
Present.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Okay, and so I'm sure Commissioner Garcia will be joining us shortly. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Okay, we're going to go on to the Pledge of the Allegiance and also the State Pledge. So I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States. I salute the flag of the state of New Mexico, the symbol of perfect friendship among united cultures. Okay, next we're going to go on to our moment of reflection, and from the Public Safety Department we have Catherine Uroste.
I'll be reading a poem titled How the Virus Stole Easter by Christy B. With a nod to Dr. Seuss, it was late in 19 then the virus began, bringing chaos and fear to all people, each land. People were sick, hospitals were full, doctors overwhelmed, no one in school. As winter gave way to promise of spring, the virus raged on, touching peasant and king. People hid in their homes from the enemy unseen. They YouTubed and Zoomed, social distance and cleaned. April approached and churches were closed. There won't be an Easter, the world supposed. There won't be church service and egg hunts for new dresses when we can't go out. Holy Week started, as bleak as the rest. The world was focused on masks and on tests. Easter can't happen this year, it proclaimed. Online and at home, it just won't be the same. Monday, Thursday, Good Friday, the days came and went. The virus pressed on, it just would not relent. The world woke Sunday and nothing had changed. The virus still means the people estranged. Who to the saints, the world was grumbling. They're finding out now that Easter is not coming. They're just awake, we know just what they'll do. Their mouths will hang open a minute or two, and then all the saints will cry out boo. The noise said the world will be something to hear, so it paused and the world put a hand to its ear. And it did hear a sound coming through all the skies. It started down low, then it started to rise. But the sound wasn't depressed. Why the sound was triumphant, it couldn't be so. But it grew with abundance. The world stared around, popping its eyes, then it shook. What it saw was a shocking surprise. Every saint in every nation, the tall and the small, was celebrating Jesus in spite of it all. It hadn't stopped Easter from coming. It came somehow or other. It came just the same. And the world with its life quite stuck in quarantine stood puzzling and puzzling just how can it be? It came without bonnets, it came without bunnies, it came without egg hunts or money. Then the world thought of something it hadn't before. Maybe Easter, it thought, doesn't come from a store. Maybe Easter perhaps means a little bit more. At what happened then, well, the story's not done. What will you do? Will you share with that one or two or more people needing hope in this right night? Will you share the source of your life in this fight?
Thank you. Thank you for that poem. Thank you for that moment of reflection. So next we're going to go on to our next item, and it's item number F, letter F, approval of the agenda.
Very much. That was really nice.
Do we have any changes to the agenda?
Yes, Mr. Chair, the agenda was amended on 410, and we just had a couple of items that were moved or added on page 2 of the agenda, item 4, which is miscellaneous action items, 4C. That was originally on consent. But because there were some questions, we moved that to miscellaneous action items. Then under item 7, matters from the county manager, recognition of National Telecommunicator Week was added. And then also under item 10, matters from the county attorney, item A2 was added. And those are the only changes to the agenda as it was originally posted a week ago.
Mr. Chair?
Okay, thank you for that update, Manager Miller. Are there any other changes to the agenda, any items that would like to be moved forward from commissioners?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Hanson?
I was wondering if Pablo's update could be moved up somewhere.
Where is it located now under?
It's just an informational item, but I thought it might be important for him to just say a few words.
Do you know which number that is? Is it under 7?
It's at the bottom.
Mr. Chair, it's under item 12, information and
Okay.
reports, our quarterly
So
report.
maybe it could be moved up to where it's after.
Okay, I
It
think
could
we
be moved up, Commissioner Roybal. It could be moved up to by the manager's updates.
okay. I was going to move it up right after consent, but we can do it after the manager's update.
Okay, I think that's the appropriate place for it.
Okay.
And
Any
then
other
with all
requests?
those changes, I would like to move to approve the agenda.
So we have a motion. Do I hear a second?
I second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Hanson, a second from Commissioner Hamilton, and I think Commissioner Garcia as well. Is there anything else under discussion? Okay. We'll go to a roll call vote. Commissioner Hanson,
Yes.
Commissioner Hamilton,
Yes.
Commissioner Garcia, Commissioner Garcia, Commissioner Moreno.
Yes.
This is Rudy.
Yes, Commissioner Garcia. I heard a yes from Commissioner Moreno. As Commissioner Garcia, we're taking a vote on the approval of the agenda.
I'm fine. Thank you. This is Rudy.
So the approved unanimously. We're going to go on to item number G, and this is the approval of the March 10th, 2020 Board of County Commissioners regular meeting minutes. Commissioner Hanson, usually you have some changes.
Yes, I do, and I have given them to the stenographer. And with that, I would like to move to approve the agenda, the minutes.
Second, second is Commissioner Garcia, second.
Okay, so we
And
have,
Commissioner Garcia, where are you?
I'm here at home.
Did we get to see you or not?
I'm still trying, they're helping me out, staff is helping me out. I appreciate staff, still trying to figure it out. Thank you, though.
Okay, thank you.
so we have a motion from Commissioner Hanson and a second from Commissioner Garcia. All those in favor signify. Actually, let's go to a roll call vote. Commissioner Hanson,
Yes.
Commissioner Hamilton,
Yes.
Commissioner Garcia,
Yes.
and a yes for myself as well, so it passes unanimously.
And me?
Commissioner Moreno?
Yes.
On you, sir, sorry. Okay, so we have all yeses. We're gonna move to the consent agenda. Are there anything on our consent agenda that commissioners would like to have pulled for more clarification? There's 3 items. And if not, then what's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chair, this is Commissioner Garcia. Move for approval.
So we have a motion from Commissioner Garcia,
Second.
A second.
and we have a second from Commissioner Hanson and Hamilton. Is there anything else under discussion? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to go to Commissioner Hanson for the vote.
Yes.
Commissioner Hamilton,
Yes.
Commissioner Moreno,
Yes.
Commissioner Garcia,
Yes.
and myself is a yes as well. That was a yes. So we do have an approval of the consent agenda. Can we go to our deputy clerk for resolution numbers?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. For consent agenda item 2A, it's resolution number 2020-29. For the second resolution, it'll be 2C, resolution number 2020-30.
Okay, so we have resolutions 2029 and 2030. Thank you, Deputy County Clerk. We're going to the next item, which is appointments and reappointments. The Growth Management Department, I believe we have Robert Griego. Mr. Griego, are you on the line? Mr. Griego, are you on the line? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and skip this item and see if Mr. Griego is on the line a little bit later on the agenda.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, go ahead, Manager Miller.
I can present this until if he is having difficulty getting on the line.
Okay.
The city of Santa Fe has a city county advisory council on food policy, and it was established by resolution back in 2008. And the resolution identifies that there are 13 members, and 2 of which come from the city of Santa Fe employees, and 2 which are Santa Fe County employees. And our previous senior planner, Aaron Ortegoza, Tricia Boyce have been on the council since January 2018 through January 2021. But Aaron Ortegoza is no longer county full-time, and so we need to replace her. And we are recommending Lucy Thoma from Growth Management. She is also a senior planner in Santa Fe County and coordinates long-range planning efforts, communicating with community groups, and manages the aggregate program. And so we would just recommend Lucy for that appointment.
Mr. Chair, this is Commissioner Garcia. Move for approval.
Second. Commissioner Hanson, you're muted.
So I'm gonna,
Mr. Chair, I would like to make a comment.
okay, under discussion, Commissioner Hanson.
I feel that we are incredibly lucky to have Lucy working for the Santa Fe County. Her background is quite impressive, and it was wonderful to read her background. And so I am really grateful for that piece of information. And I'm looking forward to hearing her report. And especially, I would like an update on the aggregate program and how it is moving along at this point. So thank you.
Okay, thank you for those comments, Commissioner Hanson. I couldn't agree with you more. I think Lucy's going to do a great job for the county in this position. Are there any other comments from other commissioners?
Actually, Mr. Chair, this is Commissioner Hamilton.
Yes, Commissioner Hamilton?
So I just want to follow up with, from what Commissioner Hanson said, and indicate, I think it would be a wonderful idea to have Ms. FOMO report to the board for, in terms of food, and keep those programs going is becoming an issue. So it would be good to, in the near term, hear from them what is going on. I've actually been on a couple of the Food Policy Council calls, and Lucy has been doing filling in with a very good job. So I just wanted to support the idea of getting a report back into BCC in a manner.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Chair, I thank you, Commissioner Hamilton. I just feel that in this time, that our food production also is somewhat under attack, like all of us, that if the aggregate program has been, they have been working on it for a number of years, and I think this would be an opportune time to start getting this moving and making sure that we're helping our farmers out in the county. Thank you.
Say something, so I'd like to go to her.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Manager Miller?
So Robert Griego was prepared to speak to that. If he does figure out how, I can see that he's on the call, but he doesn't have a microphone. So if he can figure out before the end of the meeting, when we get down to matters from the manager, I could have him give you an update, but he was prepared to speak to the status of aggregate and also what we are doing relative to food supply.
Okay, I appreciate that. I think that would be really informational, and it may answer some of the questions that the commissioners have. So thank you for that. We'll hopefully he'll get on the line here before or right around the manager's comments or matters from county manager. Okay, so thank you for that. So we do have a motion and a second. Commissioner Hanson?
Yes.
Commissioner Hamilton?
Yes,
Commissioner Garcia? Commissioner Garcia? Commissioner Moreno?
Commissioner Moreno, you're muted.
Okay, I'm unmuted.
Can somebody hear me? This is Commissioner Garcia.
Commissioner, I'm going to go to Commissioner Moreno first for the vote, and then I'll go to Commissioner Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had the good opportunity to see Lucy in action with the San Marcos group that has been working in like 3 or more years, and she's a good hand, and I hope you're going to have a good experience in your new position.
And so that's a vote in the affirmative, right, Commissioner Moreno?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Garcia?
Mr. Chair, I have no comment. Just my vote is yes.
Thank you, sir. So we have, and my vote is yes as well. So we have 5 yeses. The motion passes unanimously. So next we're going to item number 4, and this is a miscellaneous. So our first 4A is request approval of amendment number 2 to agreement number 2019-0110 between Santa Fe County and Santa Fe Recovery, increasing the compensation an additional $321,245 for a total contract sum of $642,000 $245, inclusive of New Mexico GRT, and extending the term of the agreement an additional year. And 2, authorization for the county manager to sign the purchase order. We have Mr. Bill Taylor from our purchasing division.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Bill Taylor. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. This amendment number 2 between Santa Fe County and Santa Fe Recovery not only increases the compensation, the additional amount of money of $321,245 and extends the term. This does require the BCC approval. This program provides assistance for short-term. It provides short-term residential and outpatient treatment services. This amendment will also readjust the compensation for both residential and outpatient services, reducing the amount of short-term residential treatment services and increasing the amount payable basically as a result of the funding from the state DWI funding source. There is a break between reporting between May and June of 2020 that's not required due to the availability of the funding between that 60-day period. So there was just a readjustment of fees that will pay for those services, and then that the reporting requirements would fall back into place after June of 2020. In addition, Santa Fe Recovery has put in place a variety of protocols related to COVID-19 designed to ensure that these needed services are provided during this public health emergency crisis that we're in for as safe a manner as possible. With that, Mr. Chair, I'll stand for any questions and request approval of Amendment 2.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. We appreciate your summary of this approval request. Is there any questions from any of the commissioners for Mr. Taylor?
Mr. Chair, this is Rudy. I have a question.
Okay, Commissioner Garcia.
So, Mr. Taylor, this is actually not out of the county's general fund. This is kind of reimbursement from the state legislature through the DWI, Department of Finance Administration, correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chair and Commissioner. That's correct.
Thank you. Thank you. This is an excellent program here in the community. Senator Nancy Rodriguez has appropriated some money for this fund and this type of effort in the community. But what an excellent! Can't say enough. But move for approval, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
So we have a motion from Commissioner Garcia. Do I hear a second?
Second.
And a second from Commissioner Moreno. Under discussion, are there any other comments or questions from any of the other commissioners? Okay, I'd just like to reiterate what Commissioner Garcia did state is this is a great program that really does help a lot of people, and so I really look forward to seeing how it evolves in the future and gets even better. Again, is there any other comments from commissioners? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to go for the vote. Commissioner Hanson?
Yes, if you're calling my name, but I didn't hear you.
Okay, so we have a vote from Commissioner Hanson. Commissioner Garcia?
Absolutely, yes.
Commissioner Hamilton?
Yes.
Commissioner Moreno?
Yes.
And myself is a yes as well, so we have 5 yeses. So it's been approved. Next miscellaneous item, and it's miscellaneous item 4B, request authorization for the county manager to negotiate and execute all document contracts and purchase order necessary or proper with a contractor to provide ambulance billing and collection service to the Santa Fe County Fire Department purchasing. And from the purchasing department, we have Mr. Bill Taylor once again. And I believe we have our fire department chief, Litzenberg, as well.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Bill Taylor. Good afternoon, commissioners again. What we're doing here is trying to request approval by the board to grant authority to the county manager to negotiate and execute the documents or contracts. We are currently in a procurement process, RFP, and selecting a third-party firm to provide ambulance billing for Santa Fe County Fire Department. Historically, we've been underachieving in this area with billing and collections, and approximately 50% of billable amounts have been able to be collected. So in order to correct this deficiency, we've issued the RFP. We received 5 proposals to date. The evaluation committee is now reviewing proposals, and because of vacancies, really, we're not in the billing and collection business, so to speak, in the fire department. So it's a deficiency that we're trying to correct. And they've been providing that service for billing since the inception of the fire department in 1997. Historically, well, as I mentioned, we've only been able to achieve about 50%. We hope to expect to achieve and improve approximately 85%, if not better, using a third-party billing and collection contractor. With that, Mr. Chair, we will we'll stand for any questions from the commissioners.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Hanson?
I just wanted to state that, I think that this is important, but there was an article in the paper that did not really explain what we were doing. I did get a phone call from the speaker, and he felt that this looked a little bad, considering that we're trying to, in this crisis, trying to reduce people's debt and not incur more debt on people. And that we need, that maybe in the agreement, we need to make sure that we put something in the contract that states that if people have suffered from this pandemic and are unable to pay, that they have a exception or something like that. Because in this time, people who are losing jobs and have no means to pay bills, it's a difficult situation, and by no means are we trying to look like we are trying to be a debt collector at this point. This is something that has been in the works for quite some time. Both Commissioner Hamilton and I sit on the audit committee, and the fire department has been audited for this, and this has been an ongoing issue that needs to be resolved. But at the same time, being in this challenging situation with the coronavirus, we need to be conscious of people who might not be able to pay, and make sure that we give plenty of leeway. And I know we haven't even signed a contract yet, but in the process, I probably would like to hear from the county manager on this, and how we could add something like that into the contract. But I am in favor of us moving to this billing system, because I feel like we are definitely losing money, and eventually, God willing, we will be out of this pandemic, and we will be back to not normal. I don't think we will ever return to what is normal, but we will be back to a different situation.
Mr. Chair?
Thank you, Commissioner Hanson. I'm going to go to Manager Miller.
Mr. Chair, there's a misperception as to what this is, and I actually did respond to the speaker because he sent a comment to me as well. This isn't a collection service, it's a billing service. We currently use internal staff to do, and it's medical billing predominantly of insurance companies for ambulance services. So 93% or more of our bills, ambulance billing, go to insurance companies. There's only about 6-7% that are private payers. We're not changing our collection policy. We are merely changing doing our ambulance billing internally versus externally with a contractor. And there are contractors that are set up to do this. This is what they do for multiple agencies. We're not really set up to do it. We have 2 positions to do it, and it's not sufficient. They frequently get behind in billing the insurance companies. It's hard to catch up. It's not something that is a typical county job. It's, I'd say, just about every public entity in New Mexico of any size that has any significant ambulance volume uses a private billing entity. So the contract is for that. It's not for bad debt collection. That's not the point of it. They have to follow our policy for collection. And if the board wants to change the county's collection policy, that's a different process. We're not asking for a change to our ambulance billing collection policy. We're merely trying to award a contract to somebody to do our billing and receive those payments and distribute them to the county.
Okay, thank you, Manager Miller. Thank you for the clarification. That's how I understood it, and I'm glad that you actually clarified that. I got a little concerned for a minute there, but that's how I understood it. Is there any other questions or comments from the board?
So, Mr. Chair, I really appreciate Catherine making everything clear because it was not in the paper. And so I feel like it is important that those comments be clear for the public. And with that, I'll move to approve.
So we have a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
We have a motion.
Mr. Chair, this is Commissioner Garcia. Commissioner Garcia, I have a couple of questions really quick.
Okay, so we do have a motion from Commissioner Hanson and a second from Commissioner Moreno. So under comment, we're going to Commissioner Garcia.
Just really quick, how much is the RFP for? First of all, question number one. And second of all, what guarantee does the Santa Fe County have that the RFP respondents are actually going to collect the money that we're paying the RFP for? And also, what does the state or the city of Santa Fe or city of Albuquerque do for these uncollected debts? How do they handle it?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Andrew.
So the city of Santa Fe uses a contractor, and it's not for uncollected debts. As I said, this is for ambulance billing. So if somebody has a ride in an ambulance, typically would bill their insurance company or Medicaid or Medicare for the ambulance service. And insurance pays those bills. Very little of this is private payers. Most of our ambulance billing revenue is from insurance companies. There is a percentage that are private payers, people who don't have insurance or choose not to have insurance that covers that. Maybe they only have major medical or something like that. But that's a small percentage. Almost every large ambulance service uses a billing company. They don't do it themselves. So City of Santa Fe, City of Albuquerque, Bernalillo County, those that provide ambulance service use a billing contractor. The billing contractor gets paid as a percentage of what's collected. We typically have $2 to $2.5 million worth of ambulance billing in a year, but we're collecting less than 2 million. So we're leaving several hundred thousands of dollars of billable insurance payments to on the table because our staff is not able to handle the volume and the complexity of the billing. So the vendor gets paid on each ambulance bill that gets paid to us by insurance companies or a private payer. They get a small percentage. I can't tell you what that is at the moment because process evaluating the contractors.
Thank you, Manager Miller. No further questions, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so we have a motion, so, and a second, so I'm gonna go, Commissioner Hanson? Commissioner Hanson?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so Commissioner Garcia?
Yes.
Commissioner Moreno?
Yes.
Commissioner Hamilton?
Yes.
And a yes for myself as well, so we have a unanimous decision and vote for approval. Thank you, Mr. Taylor.
Thank you.
Okay, so on our next item, it's item number 4C, and this is request authorization for the Attorney's Office to file in District Court a petition on behalf of the Board of County Commissioners seeking to change precinct boundaries and to designate a new polling place, voter convenience center for a consolidation precinct. Elections, we have Mr. Steve Frescus, and also from the county attorneys, Cristela Valdez. Mr. Frescus, are you on?
Is Cristela going to do this? Mr. Cristela is going to present this one.
Okay, so
Chair Roybal, commissioners, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you.
yes, we
And
can.
okay. Thank you. So the county clerk's office is asking for two things, and because we're so close to the primary election, we need a court order to accomplish both, we think. And the first thing is to adjust precinct boundaries. So when the county clerk's office was preparing for precinct designation in 2019, they used the U.S. Census data, which will be used for legislative reappropriation in 2021 for reapportionment after the census is complete. And because the reapportionment hasn't occurred, there is a discrepancy in what was designated by the Board of County Commissioners in July of 2019 as precinct boundaries for certain precincts, which I believe Steve included an overview showing where those precincts are within the county. And I believe that this change won't affect any voters on how they will be voting. It's just to readjust the precinct boundary back so that we are not violating law, which only allows the state legislature to change those precinct boundaries that would affect districts. So what happened is we did inadvertently change some Senate district boundaries. And so we're just trying to move those precinct lines back for the 2020 election cycle so that we're compliant with state law. And we do need a court order to do that. And the second change that the county clerk is asking for is to change a polling place in Edgewood for the consolidated precincts that were to be voting at the Legacy Church, which is no longer able to host the election. So we'll need to designate the Town of Edgewood administrative offices as the new polling place for those consolidated precincts. And I stand for any questions.
Mr. Chair, you're muted.
I hit the unmute and somebody hit the mute. I think they're trying to help me out. Anyway, is there any questions from any commissioners?
Mr. Chair, this is Commissioner Garcia. Yes, I have questions.
Commissioner Garcia?
So, okay. So let's take my precincts 86, 89, 12B, 12A, and La Cienega. So are these boundaries being adjusted as into where you're going to vote, where you're not going to vote? I don't understand. And my other question is, what does it mean inadvertently we actually changed some Senate boundaries as in where they can vote down in the Edgewood area? What does inadvertently mean, and who allowed that, and why are we having to get a court approval now for this?
Commissioner Garcia, I believe it was an error in the, sorry.
Yes, I'm sorry, can somebody please mute their background, their background, please? There's some stuff in the background, please. Thank you.
So I believe the error came from some data that the clerk's office was using from a consultant that is participating in the boundary changes for the legislative reapportionment. So I think it was inadvertent because they were using data that would be valid for the 2021 election cycle, but not the 2020 election cycle. And we're kind of in an anomaly for when the BCC approved the precinct boundaries in 2019. It was kind of an unusual year because we have the census in 2020. So I think that anytime you're going to have a census year, there probably needs to be two different precinct designations. One for the pre-census elections, and then one after. So I think here we did, as we were supposed to, have a precinct designation that would work in 2021 after the census, but it doesn't work for the election cycles before that. So what we're actually asking for is to allow it to revert back for the next election cycle in 2021, because we will need those designations. They're likely to be consistent with legislative reapportionment. So it was just that the clerk's office used the data too soon. Even though
hold on. I have some concerns that the clerk's office used 2021 possibly census data, and we should have been using 2019 or 2018, 2016, 2017 census data. And I guess I'm a little bit, I don't know. I just have a challenge with this as to, I guess I don't know what's going on. I don't understand it. How can we actually assume on the 2021 census, this is what's going to happen, so let's create these different precincts in my portion of the county, Edgewood, and let's move the senator districts for the senator or representatives election points, and now I guess I just don't understand. Can you please make it a little bit more clear to me, please?
Yes, and I believe maybe Steve is on here. He can explain.
Mr. Chair, just to be, Christella, I don't see on my map any place in Edgewood where this realigning is taking place. Most of this realigning is taking place in District 1 and District 2.
Thank you.
And District 4 possibly. There might be a little bit in District 3 near La Cienega, but it looks like they use some lines along, that they moved the lines just a little further than they should have. And I also don't understand how this could have happened since we don't have 2021 census data. Or
And just
2020.
on that,
Thank you,
just on that note,
Commissioner Hanson.
just on that note, Mr. Chair. Also, just on that note, this is Commissioner Garcia. I guess I don't understand.
Commissioner Garcia, go ahead.
I guess just on Commissioner Hanson's note, how can we adjust these boundaries or adjust senator districts or representative districts? How can we just do that like right now with this proposal? I guess I don't get it. So if somebody can please explain to me in elementary terms, I'm good at that.
Commissioner Garcia, I believe they are going to revert it back to the original place and the original lines. They have to go to have a district court order in order to do that.
So thank you, Commissioner Hanson. So really quick, Steve Fresquez, I think I see him on the
Yeah,
computer.
I'd like to hear from Mr. Fresquez next if we can, guys.
Yes. So really quick, Mr. Chairman. So if we have, let's take La Cienega, precinct 12B and 12A. Okay, that's La Cienega. Half of La Cienega is 12A, the other half is 12B. So my question is, if we adjust the line from one street to the other street, or one arroyo to the other arroyo, do those people in both precincts still get to vote at any designated precinct place, whether it's at the Rotary grounds, up north, or whatnot? Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Garcia. Steve, if you can answer those questions.
Is the county clerk not available, or the deputy county clerk? Or
I'm available, but I can't get on this.
That's okay. What about the deputy county clerk or the county clerk?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you, Steve.
Okay, thank you. I've been trying to get on for like 50 minutes. I apologize for that. Let me give you a little bit of background on this. We didn't use any census data at all. What we did is House Bill 407.
Will you please pull down your computer so we can see your face?
How's that?
Better.
Okay. House Bill 407 mandated that any precinct that had more than 750 voters in the 2018 and 2016 general elections had to be split for redistricting. So that's what we did last year in July. So while we were doing these splits, we were also looking, we were planning for future growth. So in exhibits A and B along the Agua Fria area, we were trying to keep the community together because the census likes to keep communities of interest. So therefore we used the river as the boundary there instead of Agua Fria Street, so that we could bring those people that were between the river and Agua Fria into those precincts there. That is a House and a Senate boundary. We realized when we were reviewing the precincts in January after the Secretary of State approved them, we found the discrepancies. And it was too late in January to get on an agenda for a meeting. So state law 1-3-5 dictates that no precinct shall be created, divided, abolished, or combined, or the boundaries adjusted less than 4 months prior to a statewide election. So that's why we are seeking the court order. None of these boundaries are affecting any voters. One of the exhibits shows the area by the Super Walmart where a Senate line actually goes through Nino Otero School. Most of these boundaries that were adjusted were used because they were better boundaries than the existing ones. And even though they're just lines on the map from 2010, we decided that it would be better to revert back in those areas where there were discrepancies, since it was a presidential election, and that way there would be no basis for any type of a protest later on. As far as the precinct replacement down in Edgewood, we had planned to use the Legacy Church for voting. They contacted us about last month to let us know that they would no longer be able to provide the building for us. So that's why we had to get a replacement polling place for that area down there. The reason that all of this was done is so after the census data was accumulated, they could populate the new precincts with the new census data so that they could draw new House and Senate district lines. and eventually county commission. So does that give you any more of a basis of understanding as to why we're doing this?
Mr. Chair, this is Rudy, Commissioner Garcia.
Yes, Commissioner Garcia?
Steve Frescas, thank you for the explanation. I'd like to ask the county clerk or the deputy county clerk, how come this is being brought up like now, like a month or two before the primary?
Well, we wanted to review all the boundaries.
No, Steve. I want to hear from the deputy county clerk, Julia Valdez, or the county clerk. Are they available?
Well, I think, Commissioner, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, this is really the venue of the chief deputy of the Bureau of Elections. So I think that really this is under Mr. Frescas's purview.
Thank you, Deputy Clerk. Dick, responsibility. This is actually under the county clerk, and the Bureau of Elections manager is actually doing an excellent job. But I'm just whenever Mr. Frescas, whenever you asked about adjusting commissioner boundary lines or state representative boundary lines or state senator boundary lines, is this affecting any existing boundary lines that we currently have? Because it's interesting for me to hear that we were utilized, and it's not your fault, you're actually under the county clerk and the deputy county clerk, and it's interesting for me to hear that we utilize the census data, projected census data that we shouldn't have never utilized. I'm just perplexed as into how and why.
Mr.
And so my
Chair.
question is this going to adjust any senator or representative or county commissioners or any elected officials' boundary lines? Or is it just going to? Thank you. Please
Mr.
answer.
Chair. Mr. Chair, it's Julia.
Yes, Julia, go ahead. Sorry, I was, I think I'm getting some help with the muting, but I need to depend on me, I guess. So go ahead, Julia.
It's all new to all of us.
Mhm.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Garcia, every year, every 10 years that they do the census, so we did this in 2010, they have to go in and redistrict due to the way the population moves around. And so this is done. And so what my understanding, what I've learned from Steve is that the precincts were the same, they just got split differently. But it was the same original precinct with the same splits. And so it was due to the population expectation, the movement of the population expectation. And so that's where the census comes in, because we have to know. So census is done every 10 years, but every year there are smaller censuses that are being done in order to see the movement of the population and the way it moves. And so what happened is that, as Steve explained, it was this statute that got passed this year in 2012, Steve. Please correct me if I'm wrong. But that's what happened, was that we had to rush it because of the fact that the legislature passed this bill. Secretary of State, we are under their statutes. And that's how we had to follow it.
Thank you to Deputy County Clerk Julia Valdez. We all know what we're dealing with these days, and you see the papers and the news media is into this whole Republican, Democrat, mail-in ballots, and so on and so forth throughout the nation. And I just want to ask the question as into why would it be going off of 2020 census when the census hasn't even been done and projected population areas? So my question, in Santa Fe County, Rancho Viejo, Commissioner Moreno's district, and the growth is growing there because the county passed the SDLC, the Sustainable Mountain Development Code, and that's where we want all the growth to go, right? So are we going to come back in the next month or 2 months or 4 months and say, hold on, now we have a population of 4,000, 6,000, 8,000, 10,000 people there. So is Commissioner District 5 going to get a lot more voters and a lot more precincts? I'm just thinking way ahead, or how does this work and where are you at with all this? Because Santa Fe County does have growth, and I can see other communities that don't have growth, but I'm just wondering, is this the beginning as in to start adjusting more precincts within the commission district, more precinct numbers or more precinct voting places within the Senate district, or more voting precincts within a state representative district? Where are we going with this? And why did the state law create this or mandate or make this mandatory?
Chair Reval, Commissioner Garcia, let me clarify one thing. We did not use any census data at all, projected or otherwise, to do this. This was all, the data that we used for this was voter turnout. That's the reason that these splits were created. We are not going to create any more polling places. We are not going to do any more precinct splits. We just wanted to adjust these boundaries because even though the U.S. Census has accepted them, and all these are actually, they're just placeholders for the data once the data is accumulated. We need to keep the boundaries the same for the 2020 presidential election. At the end of 2020, January 1st, the reason we're asking for these boundaries to revert, these are the boundaries that the Census Department is going to populate with census data. We're doing this now because my focus was to move all the voters into the correct precinct before voting started. We've been working on this resolution, and we are still double checking all the boundaries to make sure that we didn't find any more. There were no county commission boundaries affected. The boundaries that were affected were just in the areas of the exhibits that you had. Some of them were just replaced. We used roads to replace arroyos, but we try to use clearer, more defined boundaries when we did this. We didn't really, I didn't catch this until after the Secretary of State approved them. We started moving voters into their proper precincts. And GIS, Earl Wright and myself were doing a review when we found these. It was already too late to correct this with a county commission resolution. Therefore, we had to ask for a court order because that's what state law requires. But this is all we're going to do for the remainder of this year. We're not going to be creating any other precincts. Next year, possibly, depending on voter turnout in this election, the legislature might have to split additional precincts based on the 750 voters per precinct. But all this was is to correct the boundaries in the exhibits. It will not affect any voters. It will not affect anything and at all as far as the House and Senate districts. We cannot change House and Senate district boundaries because only the legislature can do that. That's why these corrections had to be made.
Thank you, Mr. Fresco. Excellent job that you do there for the Bureau of Elections in Santa Fe County. I appreciate that. One last question. So this will not eliminate any voting sites in any commission district, correct?
That's correct. And the only reason there's a voting site on this at all is because the Legacy Church was unable to provide us with a site for this election. Therefore, we needed an alternate site in Edgewood. So the town of Edgewood Administrative Office is going to allow us to do voting there so that we have a voting convenience center down in that area for the voters.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Fresco, once again, thank you very much. And also, so we contacted the mayor as well as the town council in Edgewood about this?
Yeah, we talked to them. They sent us a written authorization to use their site for early voting and election day voting this year.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Fresco, once again. And with that, there's no further questions from the county commission. I'd like to make a motion for approval, Mr. Chair.
So we have a motion from Commissioner Garcia.
Second.
I hear a second. And a second.
Okay, from Commissioner Hanson.
Commissioner Hanson. Is there any other questions or comments? We have a motion and a second. Are there any other questions or comments relative to this issue? Okay, seeing none, I'm gonna go to the vote. Garcia?
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you.
Commissioner Hanson,
Yes.
Commissioner Hamilton,
Yes.
Commissioner Moreno,
Yes.
and myself was a yes as well, so there's 5 yeses. Thank you, Mr. Frescas, for the difficult questions that you were able to answer for us. We appreciate you being here today. So with that being said, we have an approval of item number C, or it's 4C. So we're going to go on to item number 5, and this is matters of public concern. Is there from the public that would like to address the commission today?
Mr. Chair, we have Sam Chavez with AFSCME who signed up to speak.
Okay, Mr. Chavez, are you there?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I'd like to speak about the coronavirus going around in Santa Fe County. The union has worked with the commission on with the HR and the attorney's office and, about it on emergency responders. We get a response on essential staff. You've got some people that have been traveling out of state on county business. When they arrived back to New Mexico, they were told to quarantine, and they were not. They had to use their own leave. You had an employee at the DA's office who was asked by the Department of Health to have self-quarantine, and he has to use his own leave for it. Now we have an issue at the
Mr.
facility.
Chavez, do you think you could adjust your camera just a little bit? I know that Commissioner Hanson likes to be able to see everybody's face, so if you don't.
Right now, we don't know how many employees could be exposed to it. What needs to happen, or what we're asking to do, is for the county, if these people that are working for Santa Fe County who are on the clock or doing Santa Fe County related business, the Santa Fe County be the one to pay the quarantine days to them. Because some of your employees, and for them to use their own leaves, it's just wrong. And that's what I ask of you, the commissioners, to please look into.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chavez. I think that those are some good points that we'll consider. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, is there anybody else from the public that would like to address the commission? Do we have anybody else? I don't know if staff would be able to answer that if we've got anybody else that would like to address the commission.
Mr. Chavez was the only person who had previously mentioned he'd like to address the commission.
Okay, with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and close public comment. And we're going to go on to, I believe there's not anything under presentations. Is that correct? Manager Miller?
That is correct.
Okay, so I'm going to go on to number 7, and these are matters from the county manager. We did have an additional item that we added to the bottom, and that was going to be the report from Pablo Cedillo. For now, we're going to go on to miscellaneous updates. Manager.
Of course, I don't have it up. Hold on 1 second. So, Mr. Chair, on my miscellaneous updates, I just have the recognition of the National Telecommunicator Week, which is April 12th through the 18th. And every year it is the second full week of April. It's dedicated to honoring the men and women who serve their communities as public safety telecommunicators. And it was first conceived by Patricia Anderson of the Contra Costa County, California Sheriff's Office in 1981. This recognition was observed only at that agency for 3 years. Then members of the Virginia and North Carolina chapters of the Association of Public Safety Communications Officials took note and became involved in the mid-1980s. And then by the early 1990s, the National APCO organization convinced Congress of the need for a formal proclamation. And Representative Edward J. Markey, a Democrat from Massachusetts, introduced what became House Joint Resolution 284 to create National Public Safety Telecommunicator Week. And according to congressional procedure, it was introduced twice more in 1993 and 1994, and then became permanent without the need for yearly introductions. So we just wanted to take this opportunity to honor and thank all of our local Santa Fe 911 operators for their hard work and dedication and continued service to the citizens of Santa Fe County.
Thank you, Manager Miller. Do we have any questions or comments from the commission?
Mr. Chair, this is Commissioner Garcia.
Yes, Commissioner Garcia.
Really quick, just, we all thank you for every public safety individual that's out there. These days, thank you for everybody that's out there that's working. And one of the things that people may or may not realize, back in, Catherine, you can correct me if I'm wrong, back in 1995, the year 2000, when the federal government mandated each local government to create a 911 address. And the reason why it was a 911 address, and sometimes people wonder why we have those little red tags that say whatever your address is on your street there, especially in the rural areas, because what we've all been working towards is getting to, when you call 911, people don't realize when they call the emergency dispatch center, hi, what's your emergency? And those individuals there that are working behind the scenes to dispatch an ambulance or whatever needs to be dispatched out there, because of that rural addressing, it helps us all communicate and work together to get there within hopefully 3, 5, 7 minutes. And a lot of times people don't realize when you call 911, those individuals answering their phones they're the ones that dispatch all public safety individuals out there. But thank you for bringing this forward, Manager Miller. This is actually great because everybody has a communication part in this, and we all need to communicate and work together. But thank you, Manager Miller. Appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I would just like to agree with Commissioner Garcia and just thank Manager Miller for bringing this forward. The recognition of the National Telecommunicators Week. Is there any other comments? If not, I think we can go on. Commissioner Hamilton?
Well, we can go on quickly, but I just wanted to add my voice to what a difficult job it is to be an emergency operator and what the burden they carry to be accurate and efficient and the hard work they do. And in Santa Fe County, they've been carrying lots of hours, and we really, really appreciate their efforts.
Yes. Yes. Thank you, Commissioner. Yes. Awesome.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to go on to our item number C, and this is a COVID-19 emergency update.
Oh, I had one more, and it's somewhat related, Mr. Chair, as far as miscellaneous updates, and that's on our YDP or juvenile facility closure. The youth have been relocated to San Juan County, and we are using the facility to spread out the number of inmates that would be or to create greater distancing. As we said, one of the things that we wanted to have use of the youth facility for at this time is in case we had any positive cases of COVID-19 at the adult detention facility, that we would be able to use the youth facility to help help us isolate inmates or spread inmates out. And so we are currently using that facility in order to allow for greater distancing among both male and female populations at the adult facility. All of the employees had job offers made to them, and with 4 exceptions, employees stationed at YDP accepted the job's offer. 1 affirmatively declined the job offer. 2 did not respond to their job offers, which is considered a denial, and 1 has until tomorrow to decide. Several of them did respond and have already accepted other positions. So that's all I have on the YDP closure. The COVID-19 emergency update.
Just, Mr. Chair, this is Commissioner Garcia, if I may, just really quick on that.
Commissioner Garcia, go ahead.
I appreciate Manager Miller actually going and talking about job offers and so on and so forth, because this is a whole brand new, obviously, this is all something new to us, and so I appreciate her and her staff working with giving some job offers, and because she's actually doing a very good job as into how do we keep the county moving forward, right? And one of the other things is that individuals may or may not realize Manager Miller texted us all on Easter Sunday and said, here's some bad news. Sorry to interrupt you on a Easter Sunday, but not interrupting, but she's actually like our superintendent, working 24/7 as into what's happening with the women moving from the facility to the juvenile facility. And so appreciate that, Manager Miller, because sometimes people don't realize you're actually working on a Sunday, Easter Sunday. Thank you for that. Also, just really quick on the juvenile facility, all those pods that were not being used are actually, they're up to par, correct? They actually have heating, cooling, water, running water, sanitary toilets, all that stuff. I just want to make sure about that so we don't get calls on that. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Garcia, yeah, the facility was all in for operation. We did have the other side of the facility that we used to call the ARC, and we've been using for storage. But the rest of the facility with the juveniles in it was all operating properly and in good working order.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Manager Miller.
Thank you, Commissioner Garcia. Manager Miller?
So the update on the COVID-19 emergency is that, as I said, we did have 1 inmate test positive, and that inmate was an inmate that was tested back on March 28th, and we tested 9 inmates on March 28th. We received the results on March 30th, and all 9 were negative. They were housed in a pod together, and about a week later, one of the inmates that had been tested wasn't feeling well. We isolated him in medical and retested him on April 7th. And on April 12th, we received notification that he tested positive. We immediately got a list of anybody that had been in contact with that inmate, to include 33 inmates and 8 staff members. We tested all 41 of them yesterday, and we received all but 3 of those test results back today. All 33 inmates came back negative, and all 5 staff members that were tested got results back on, came back negative. We are still waiting for 3 of those test results get sent with the original batch for processing.
Catherine, County Manager Miller?
Is this Pablo Cedillo?
Yes, I just was notified that we have one more negative from a staff member. Just came in about 15 minutes ago.
That's good news.
Thank you.
So we're pending two more, and we should get that.
Thank you for that update, sir.
So we've had a lot of inquiry from the media about it. I've talked to, Carmelina has talked to them, provided them the information that we have. There's been some suggestion we should test every inmate. The problem with testing every inmate is that a test is just a moment in time. You can see by the results of this particular inmate's test on March 30th, he was negative, and on April 12th, he was positive, and he had been in the facility the entire time. So it's difficult to say what created the delay in a positive response. And additionally, the guards, they leave the facility to go home in the evenings, and testing them every day is also impractical. So we are testing per the DOH guidelines, and probably a little more extensively, where we want to take an abundance of caution in trying to make sure that our inmates and our employees are safe. We continued, as I said, to spread the inmates out as much as possible and isolate them without leaving them completely isolated. So we're trying to make sure that we do not have any additional COVID-19 positives in our facility or with any of our staff. Also, we are providing additional support for homeless and a domestic abuse population. We have increased our contracts with our 4 shelters at $20,000 a piece. We're all, and the homeless shelters, and another $20,000 to the domestic abuse shelters, for a total of an additional $100,000. We're also we've been working with the city with their Midtown campus, and have directed our contractor that provides mobile crisis response, and have repurposed them to serve the chronically mentally ill and homeless clients at the city's Midtown campus. We're also working with the city on food distribution, and how we might be able to partner with them with a project that they're trying to do with locally grown foods, the chefs, and delivering thousands of meals a week. We also, tomorrow at 3 o'clock, we have our Connect program. We're still jointly kicking off the city and county Connect program, and we're going to do that via press release and the public facing Connect program for county residents. And this program may allow navigators to connect people to food, housing, and other resources. And that's that program, Santa Fe Connect, that we've been working on for quite some time, and can't be more appropriate than right now, I think, to try to connect people to their needed services. That is what I have on our COVID-19 updates.
Okay, great. Thank you for that update. Are there any questions or comments from the commissioners?
Mr. Chair, I have some comments, but I guess I can bring it up when it comes to matters from elected officials or matters from county commission, whatever you would like.
Okay, you can bring it up during matters of county commissioners.
Thank you, sir.
I think relative to what Manager Miller was just discussing, we can actually, if you want to bring it up now.
I'm fine, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner Garcia. Okay, and so that concluded all your the COVID-19 emergency update. So we're on to item 7D, fiscal year 2020 budget update.
Yes, Mr. Chair. So, as you know, we were originally scheduled to do the budget study session for our first budget study session for fiscal year 2021 this morning, but unfortunately, the COVID-19 emergency has turned our financial situation upside down. As you know, every restaurant, every dining, eating, retail store, museum, you name it, every entertainment facility has been closed. And that, aside from how many people have lost their jobs, it also means that economic activity has basically come to a standstill in Santa Fe and in New Mexico and across the whole country, if not in numerous places around the world. While we won't feel the impact of that for another month or two because our revenues are distributed to us on a 2-month delay from when they're collected at the cash register, we will start to feel that. We will start to feel that effect of the loss of revenues, and we anticipate that it will be severe. So what we did, instead of trying to present you with what was submitted from the departments and the elected officials for next year's budget requests, is we actually went back to the departments and asked them to go back over all of their budget requests for fiscal year 2021 and remove anything that they could remove from that request that wasn't critical to their mission. And we're asking that those be back to finance on the 15th, tomorrow. The point of that is that we'd still like to present an FY 2021 budget to you, but it will just be a what I'd say a mark in time, because we anticipate having to modify the budget. I would be shocked if we get it dead on our first shot, that we estimate the revenues and needed expenditures under these circumstances exactly correct. So what I've asked Joey to do, and she's over in her office, is to present, to put a presentation together for you that talks about what we're doing right now from April through June 30. How we start our next fiscal year is completely dependent on how we end this fiscal year. And we already have tightened our belts. While we haven't done any furloughs or layoffs or anything of that nature, you know, the union commented on a request for administrative leave. So many people, and today, Krista St. Vincent just laid off 300 employees, but so many entities aren't even able to keep their employees. We have the goal of trying to keep every employee that's currently employed with us, that wants to stay employed with us, and this storm. But it does mean we really have to reduce our expenditures and do what we can to mutually share in this difficult situation. So it is correct that we have asked employees to use their generous leave balances. The county has millions of dollars of annual and sick leave on the books. Fire department has over $1 million, corrections has close to $1 million. And so we have asked that they share in this expense of responding to this emergency. That doesn't mean that it has to stay that way. It's just that that's where we are at the moment, trying to make sure that we keep our expenditures down we keep our payroll as manageable as possible, and we stop spending on anything that isn't absolutely critical through June 30th, and that we build a budget for next year that we believe we can sustain. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Joey. She's put together about, I want to say it's about 15 to 20 slides, 16 slides, to let you know kind of where we are and what we've done to date and where we'll go next.
Good afternoon, Chair Roybal. Commissioners, can you hear me? No? Okay.
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Yes,
You can?
yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Fantastic. Thank you so much. I appreciate IT gave me a camera for my desktop computer this afternoon, but then I realized I didn't know if I had a mic on this computer, so excellent. So I'm here to give you a budget update on our revenue outlook and some austerity measures. The status of the United States economy right now, as we all know, jobless claims are way up. It strengthens the economists' expectations of job losses up to 20 million in April, and their conviction that the economy is in a deep recession. So with more than 95% of Americans under a stay-at-home or a shelter-in-place order, reports continue to mount of state employment offices being overwhelmed by a deluge of applications. So the economists say the economy did enter a recession already in March, and this is from Reuters. And in the first month alone, the coronavirus crisis is poised to exceed any comparison to the Great Recession. The status of the New Mexico economy is that nearly 73,000 people in New Mexico have lost their jobs over the last 3 weeks, as new numbers show another surge in unemployment claims for the state, according to the federal data that was made public last Thursday. That was the most recent data that I could locate, and that was on www.kob.com. It appears increasingly clear that the $7.6 billion budget plan that was approved by lawmakers in February for the state for the fiscal year that starts July 1 will have to be scaled back significantly. They're talking about going back again to the drawing board, similarly to what we're going to be doing here in Santa Fe County for our budgets here. Obviously, our world has changed, and nobody could have guessed it a month or so ago, and nobody really knows what this is going to do. So we've decided, like the county manager said, we're starting to tighten our belts now because we're not sure what the revenues are going to do next year. The general fund unassigned fund balance as of this week is $37,883,280. The total original FY 2020 general fund budget was just over 93, almost 93.5 million. Unassigned fund balance equates up to about 40% of the general fund budget. Total original 2020 operating budget is 141.7 million. The unassigned fund balance equates to 26.7% of operating budget. So what all those numbers mean is that if we were to not get any revenues whatsoever, which we will get some revenues, we just don't know what it's going to do. We have enough revenues to sustain our current operations at the level that they are in our operating budget for several months. But after that, we will exhaust our fund balance. Next year's revenue projections. I spoke with the elected officials, and we were discussing the property tax revenue at an estimate of 90%, so about a 10% decrease in next year's revenues, which would equate to about a $6.8 million annual decrease. And we've also, we're looking at the current fiscal year property tax revenue for the second half. And since most people pay through escrow, most of those have already been collected. So we're hoping that we still receive the second half of the FY20 property tax revenue that will happen in the current fiscal year. We're still hoping that that comes in as budgeted. The GRT revenues, we are estimating at 70% for next year for the total annual amount. So that would be a 30% decrease or a $17 million loss. And again, the revenue collections in fiscal year 20 are expected to meet the current budgeted amount of 56.6 or $56.7 million. The hold harmless revenue, since we typically look at that as non-recurring, we are not going to budget that for next year because we're not sure what the state is going to do at this point. So that will equate to a $3.3 million decrease. And however, this year we will meet that budget amount. So if you look at all of the possible revenue.
Ms. Rowe? Well,
Yes.
I think a question from a commissioner. Commissioner Hanson, was that you?
No, that was Commissioner Hamilton.
Oh, Commissioner Hamilton?
Yeah, do you mind if we interrupt with questions relevant to what you just talked about?
Absolutely not.
So on the GRT estimate, I recognize that trying to estimate what the decrease is going to be is difficult. So that's not why I'm asking the question. I'm trying to get a feel for whether you think 70% is conservative, middle of the road. So the question is, how did you ballpark that number in?
Chair Roybal, Commissioner Hanson, or Commissioner Hamilton, I'm sorry. We looked at how we anticipate the revenues starting to decrease the last 2 months of collections for the current fiscal year. So in other words, the revenues that we will be receiving in April are those that were collected in February. So when we receive the revenues this month, we should receive them pretty much as anticipated, as if this hadn't happened, because it hadn't happened yet in February, really, for New Mexico. So the last few months of this fiscal year, we're anticipating we're going to see that decrease because people have really stopped purchasing, and what they're purchasing are medical supplies and food, which we don't collect GRT on. So I basically looked at all 12 months of next fiscal year, and if we continue seeing that decrease in the expenditures through the summer months, which again, we would be 2 months behind in receiving those revenues. So we won't really start collecting, if this starts turning around by the summer months, we'll start collecting again with people going out and starting to purchase things. We'll start collecting again towards the fall. So gradually shifting those up from even say 40 and 50% estimates for the first few months, and then gradually getting back up towards the end of the year where people are starting to purchase things as normal again, is I feel like that's hopeful, but it's also a conservative estimate as well. So it's kind of it's a shot in the dark right now, Commissioner.
Commissioner.
Thank you. I reckon. Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, Hamilton, also, when we had the recession back in 2008, 2009, our GRT dropped 25%. We anticipate it will drop at least that, and if not more. And we also believe it will come back if all things, as we currently have been led to believe by economists, and that is that the economy will bounce back quicker than it did in 2008 to 2009, because some of the underlying issues that caused the economy to crash are not here under this circumstance. But our GRTs were down by 25% in the midst of that recession. So we felt like estimating next year being down 30% is not far from reality.
Okay, it's probably good. I'm glad to see it's a little higher than the 25% from 2008 because of the more severe, more acute impacts, the way I see it. And I'm also concerned that I think while the economy will bounce back, most people will have a real lag by the time they make money, get jobs back and whatnot. and things can start opening up, I believe there will be a lag, of a few months, predictably, before people are spending at a full rate. So if we took that into account, that would give me some assurance that it's a reasonable but conservative estimate.
Okay.
So thank you.
Comments or questions from commissioners? Thank you, Commissioner Hamilton. Okay. So if you want to continue, Ms. Rowe.
Thank you, Chair Roybal. The possible revenue decrease based on the assumptions above equate to about $27.1 million for next year. The status of the fiscal year 21 budget, as the Manager Miller had mentioned, typically finance would be coming to the board today to workshop the fiscal year 21 budget requests from the departments. We had just completed the budget hearings when the COVID-19 health emergency happened, and resulting now in the economic downturn. So while the fiscal year 21 budget deadline to complete and submit to DFA has actually not changed, determining cost savings in the current year took precedence over presenting the 21 budget to you today. So as Manager Miller stated, we really need to know what we're going to end up with this year to be able to carry forward that revenue into next year to help maintain our services that we provide to our citizens. So what's being presented to you today is the work that's been done by departments in an effort to demonstrate fiscal responsibility and sustainability while maintaining services to our citizens and meeting our strategic goals. Due to the financial crisis that resulted due to this global health emergency, there is no standardized guidance with which to project a feasible 21 budget for Santa Fe County. The finance department will use past experience from the latest recession with which to build next year's budget. And there are several of us, including Manager Miller, thank you, that were working in county government in the last recession. So it took a long time to get out of that one, and we're very hopeful that this one will turn around, because a lot of the factors don't exist with this economic downturn. So because a decline in revenue is anticipated, expenditure budgets from the departments have to show a corresponding decrease to those. Departments were asked to review their 20 budgets to identify any line items that are projected to have a balance at the end of the fiscal year. And these line item savings or cost avoidances really can be used to carry forward into next year's budget to help sustain operations, as we said. Departments also reviewed their current funds that were encumbered on purchase orders to determine if any balances could be liquidated. Those reduced amounts are also going to be used to carry forward into savings for next year's budget. And as of today's presentation, there are several departments that are still working diligently with purchasing to liquidate or reduce those purchase orders. So they've all done a fantastic job. I know purchasing got a lot of purchase orders to liquidate this past week. So I would like to thank Bill and his staff over in purchasing. They've been working hard to put that money back into our funds for next year. Departments were also asked to review their current vacant positions in an effort to hold hiring to those that are only mission critical. So in effect, a hiring freeze. So the total of all possible reductions that we came up with last week working together, the departments were able to find $3.7 million in their budgets that they decided that they did not have to spend. They were not mission critical items that needed to happen. Encumbrances that I mentioned are being liquidated were over $341,000. The hiring freeze would put about almost $2.8 million into the reserves, or not reserves, but the cash fund balance at the end of the year. So the total of all those reductions would put back about $6.8 million into the cash balance. So I think we've got a good start to be able to help shore up that deficit that we may be looking at in next year's revenues. The total of all line item reductions in all departments, this is by category. So there was some, in addition to the frozen positions or positions currently not filled, the vacancies, there was a department that had some certifications that are not going to be, they're not going to spend that money this year. So that total 24,000. Obviously, we stopped training and travel a while back. So most of that money that is remaining in those lines across departments is able to be offered up to not be spent this year with the $288,000. Vehicle expenses, the $125,000. There were some maintenance expenses that we are not going to spend those budgets with 68,000. Services was a large amount of this reduction at 1,456,000. And I can explain what those services are if you'd like. Supplies, they reduced those lines by 152,000. Operating costs by 528,000. And then there were several capital purchases that departments said we don't really need to purchase these items this year. And if the economy it doesn't turn around quickly, we could possibly even look into those in fiscal year 2022. So there's the $3.6 million total.
Yes.
This is Commissioner. Could you explain the services?
Thank you. Yes.
Sure. Let me look. I printed them out by department. So Community Services Department, they had a very large amount with unencumbered budget balance for Connect. They have $250,000 of theirs that will not be used in this fiscal year by the organizations. And Rachel O'Connor indicated that there will be no services to the citizens that will be eliminated by this budget cut. And then another $500,000 in contractual services funding that was set aside for the Behavioral Health Crisis Center, which, as we know, is still not operating. So there was the amount that could be reduced there. So that was most of it. And then Public Works also had quite a few. They had $80,000 from the MS4 permitting that has not taken place, and $30,000 from unforeseen engineering or architect services. 79,000 in solid waste tipping fees that have been lower than in previous years. They feel like they will have enough budget in those lines at this time. And then in Amit, they cut out $82,000 this year because of not having conference gatherings. And I think those were the large ones in the services category. So it's not cutting services to citizens in any way. It's basically just there was enough budget remaining at this last quarter of the fiscal year that we can't really do anything with those at this time.
Mr. Chair, could you also give us a brief idea of what the capital purchases were?
Sure.
And thank you for the services. That's good to hear.
Okay. The capital purchases, I'm sorry. The elected officials had I believe it's the GIS, Manager Miller, if I'm correct on that one. I actually did not print out that detail, but I do have it in my backup here that I can pull.
Joey, there was, commissioners, we had a scheduled flyover between GIS and the assessors, and they're going to forego that this year.
Thank you.
The data collection for, we had been doing it every other year, part of the county, and the other part, well, we were going to go to, if you recall, with the assessor was going to go to doing it every year, and well, such an increase in building activity, but they're going to forego that this year, and still going to put it in the request for next year, but we'll have to see how the budget plays out for that recommendation as well. But the assessor is going to include it in his request.
Yes. Chair Roybal, Commissioners, Manager Miller, the half of that reduction in the capital purchases was the assessor's office, and it was a few vehicles, some software, satellite imagery, and the GIS flyover. So that was about half of that, and then the rest of it was all the other departments coming together with not purchasing computer equipment or things of that nature.
Great. Is there any other questions from commissioners? Comments? Yeah. Does that conclude your presentation or your update?
No, sir, there's a few more slides.
Okay.
So there were other reductions in all the departments. As I mentioned, most of the departments were able to look through all of their encumbrances and determine that where they had balances left over on possibly a purchase order that they didn't need any longer, that total was $341,177. And you can see all the different departments there of what they submitted for their encumbrances. So thank you to all the departments that did that time-consuming job of going through each line. I believe we had 100 pages of encumbrances out there, so they were able to eliminate quite a few of those. Also, the hiring freeze. If we had a hiring freeze through the end of fiscal year 20, the non-public safety positions, and this is the 133 non-public safety positions and the 96 public safety positions, that number is going to fluctuate because human resources is constantly doing the EPAs and people being transferred and everything. So those numbers are not absolute set numbers as of today. They were last week's numbers. So I just wanted to make sure that you knew that. But if we didn't fill the non-public safety positions through the end of the year, that would leave us about 1.4 million in the budget. And then the public safety positions, which we know most of those are going to be mission critical, but because they're vacancies right now, it's going to take a while possibly to hire those anyway. So we could have a realization of about $1.4 million. So the total of all departments would be almost $2.8 million in the hiring freeze or savings on the vacant positions. What I did was these next few slides, I believe there's like 7 slides here. This is by department. We already had it rolled up in a previous slide that showed the total by department, by category. So these are really just a little bit more detail for you if you wanted to look in to see where each of the different departments were able to reduce their line items. So it's whatever the pleasure of the board, Commissioner Roybal. However, if you want to go through each of these, we can. Otherwise, we've already seen the totals of these on a previous slide. These are just really there for more information for you.
I think I'm comfortable with not going through the additional slides, but I'd like to get some feedback from the other commissioners.
That's fine. I had reviewed them earlier, and with the extra explanation from Joey, I have a good grasp and really appreciate it.
Commissioner Hanson?
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Moreno? Commissioner Garcia?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. What are we voting on this? I got disconnected for really quick.
No, sir. Actually, there were some additional slides that are a little bit more defined. I think Joey has already given us a definition through in the beginning here. So she was wondering whether we would like for her to go more in depth in some of the other slides that are.
No, I'm okay with it. Where she's at. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So I think we're okay. Joey, Commissioner Moreno, did you have a comment, sir?
Yeah. It's regrettable, but we're all in the same boat. Every entity has to look real hard, and I'm sure we're gonna have some tough times with from our state and federal partners. And thank you, Catherine and your team, giving us a good picture of what is looking like. Thank you very much.
I too just want to thank you for your hard work and all of our staff that has worked hard to look for areas that we can, tighten up our belt a little bit. I think that, it's definitely something that we needed to put together to be proactive for this next year and make sure that we put our best foot forward. So I appreciate that. Any other comments from commissioners? Commissioner Hamilton?
Are we going to actually have the discussion from that's captured on the last slide about the various topics? I thought the presentation was really good, but the background for some possible discussion. What some of the intentions are for hiring, the potential hiring freeze. Joey gave some hints about that when, she indicated that for the safety workers, the public safety workers, that number is put in there because there's a lot of trainings, there's a lot of delay in achieving those hires. And so it represents money we might save, even if we're not freezing public safety worker hires. That was a good piece of information. But I have some general questions, if nothing else, about steps moving forward and how to implement these and what kind of feedback you might need for Manager Miller and senior staff to move forward with these.
Chair
Did you catch that?
Commissioners, if we could, is it possible to put up the last slide? I believe it would be slide number 17, current assumptions and board discussion.
Daniel's doing it.
So basically what I've done on the final slide is just recapped what we've discussed, what I've presented in here, just letting you know what our cost saving measures were that we outlined in the presentation and the revenue projections. We kind of discussed the 70% GRT a little bit, the hiring freeze, the use of unassigned fund balances if we needed to, and then overall, depending on the severity of the economic downturn, this may be time to start thinking about what are the county's core services and how would we prioritize those services in the event that our revenues didn't come in at 90% of our property taxes or 70% of our GRTs, or we started losing grant money, or the state had to pull back some of their capital funding or something of that nature. So
well, Mr. Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Hamilton?
I certainly have a question because this was a great analysis, but basically all of these cost saving measures that you've presented potentially cover about a third of the projected revenue loss. So moving forward into the 2021 budget, there would be other things that might have to be done. So what we can save this year is going to put us in 30% of the way to a better situation, but that's not 100% of the way. We still have to make those two ends meet.
Right.
Mr. Chair.
Sorry.
Commissioner Hamilton. That's exactly correct. And some of these things, clearly we couldn't sustain a hiring freeze on certain positions through the full next year if we start to move out of this. Part of the issue, like with a hiring freeze right now, we typically don't do one on public safety, but if you can't get everybody in a room together to test, and we don't have an alternative way of doing testing, it's not likely we're going to get some of those positions filled before July 1st anyway. But that would not be a continued cut or necessarily a recommended continued cut. We would want to keep our public safety positions filled. We have difficulty filling some of them anyway. So we have to really analyze. You can't make as blanket of a thing saying, okay, yeah, and we'll keep those same freezes in place next year. So that's a one-time savings that presenting you with that $6-7 million is one-time savings. We have to look in next year's budget for what I'll call recurring savings, something that we can save throughout the whole year, because our costs, truth be told, the majority, $92 million of our operating budget is salaries and benefits. So of that total operating budget that was given to you by Joey in one of the early slides, you can see there's not a whole lot of, we don't have $30 million or $27 million of discretionary bloated spending. We run a good budget, but we don't have a bloated budget. And, there'll be in next year when we look at where can we afford to not expend money, it's likely going to be in capital purchases, in some of our discretionary contracts for services. Those will be the things that will be removed from the budget request that departments have made, but it's not going to be a like $20 million cut. Let's just take public safety, for instance. While our population is down at the jail, so our contracts for food and pharmacy and whatnot may come down, they're not going to be gone because the fixed costs to operate the jail are still there. Required staffing to operate the jail, still there. So that's not something where we might be able to squeeze a little bit of money out of the corrections budget due to a lower population in the jail. I don't know how long we'll have a lower population, but there's not much in that budget that is discretionary. Same with, except to defer maintenance and fixed asset acquisitions and stretch the life out of your existing assets as long as you possibly can. That's the same with the sheriff's department. There's not a lot in there that is, oh, this is nice to have. The area where you can cut in public safety, and public safety, by the way, is our largest segment of our budget. So the area that you can cut is, okay, instead of replacing 30 vehicles, you only replace the absolute worst, and you replace 5 or 10 vehicles. It just stretches out when we have to make that up at some point, but that's what we'll be looking at, because otherwise, where we go, if we can't get our budget into something that we can sustain, and I would say we'd want to sustain for a couple of years, supplementing our operating budget with some of that unassigned fund balance. But, we're not looking at just next year, oh, we have $30 million, plug the whole, you lose 30 million, plug it with the cash, and there you go. That would really unwise. We'd be looking at trying to stretch that out over 2 to 3 years, because it could realistically take the economy that long to recover. It took us more like 5 or 6 years to recover from 2008, 2009. But I would say all cost of living increases are off the table. All additional FTE requests off the table. Hiring freeze for non-critical positions. We didn't say that anybody in the county was non-essential. And we believe that and the governor's order and the presidential act or the congressional act actually indicated that most of local government employees are considered essential. What we did is we tried to identify who could work from home so that we could socially distance, physically distance, but we have everybody working. Everybody is still working. We have not put anybody on administrative leave. We have not furloughed anybody. We have everybody producing. And, but where it comes down to over time is first, you don't fill positions, but if we can't get our budget to a long-term sustainability, that's when you look at furloughs or not just hiring freezes, but taking from everybody who's currently employed. That would be, in my opinion, our absolute last resort. I think that we'd like to be able to maintain what we currently have and just try to weather the storm that way. But as I said, we'll be getting all of the responses. Joey will be getting all of those back from the departments, and we will take our first shot at bringing the next year's budget down to something within what we estimate revenues to be, and hopefully be able to present you with something that we think might get us through next year. As I said, if we continue to stay in this sheltering at home and businesses are not functioning through May, June, people ask me, well, when do you think we'll start to go back to normal? I have no idea. It's not my call. I just have to make sure we're prepared for the long haul. And that we try to stretch out our financial reserves as long as possible.
Okay, thank you for that, Manager Miller. Any questions or comments from the commissioners? Okay.
Depressing.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair.
Yes. Is this Commissioner Garcia?
Yes.
Okay.
Just a couple of things I just like to make some comments on in regards to as an individual that worked for the county for almost 30 years of my life and grew up there and seen the different outcomes and different turns as into what's happened to the county. And one of the things is like, as a policymaker now, it's a bit different role, and it's a bit different challenging time for myself. And because many individuals out there in the community or employees may not realize what we actually deal with as 5 individuals. When we do talk to Manager Miller on a regular basis. We talk to, we go through our HR director as into, and I guess the bottom line that what Manager Miller is doing is, our HR director, Sonia, all the directors, all the employees, anywhere from the maintenance individuals to individual serving meals to managers, as into Catherine's ultimate goal is actually to save all of our employees and not getting laid off. And that's her ultimate goal. She told me that about 3 or 4 weeks ago because we don't know where we're going with all this stuff. And Santa Fe County is very fortunate that we have a great budgetary manager and a great manager and all of her staff and all the employees in Santa Fe, because there's some communities out there that they're not fortunate like we are. And so yes, as a policymaker, never thought I'd be being in this driver's seat as into, Rudy, you have to make some hard decisions now. What do you want to do? How are you going to do? What are you going to cut? And with the recommendations of Manager Miller and her team and the entire employees, as for everybody out there that's listening, she needs to realize she's actually taking care of the employee base, and she's actually wanting to help out the employees. So that way, we don't have to lay off individuals. We don't have to lay off sheriffs. We don't have to lay off firefighters. Like one time when my mom her anniversary was 5 years ago. 6 years ago last Wednesday night, I'd use all my annual leave, 280 hours, 195 sick leave. And so I just really respect that we have a good Santa Fe County team, from our elected officials all the way down to our employee staff, as into the manager is actually trying to work it out. And let's get through this, and let's get through this hurricane. Let's get through what we need to get through, because we don't want to lay anybody off. And so by her and her team and all the employees doing a good job of making cuts and so on and so forth, I really, really appreciate that. I just wanted to say that for the record, because, you know, the policymaker, it's tough out there, individuals. It's hard. And I talked to an elected official the other day, and he said, you know what, I tell my employees, you know what, we're trying. This is a management nightmare, he said. And he said, you know what, this is something that the manager and policymakers are having to deal with. He's like, you know what, they're all trying to save what we have going on, programs, jobs, what we're doing in the county, and they have to do what they have to do. And just one last thing is, we're actually we don't want to lay anybody off, and we want to keep all of our programs, employees, and the county going. And I think, Manager Miller, thank you and your team for actually looking in advance, because sometimes you have employees out there, you have individuals out there, you have program people out there, excuse me, the community saying, we're not doing this and this. You know what? It's challenging. It's hard. It's how do we do it? And just thank you for all of us, everybody, employees, and everybody else out there in the community for bearing with us, because we're trying and we're doing it. But thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Garcia. Great words. I couldn't agree with you more. Any other comments from commissioners? Okay. Manager Miller?
So, Mr. Chair, I think that's everything that we have on the budget right now. But I do think Robert Griego, he did message me that they were back on the line. I think Robert and Lucy. I don't know if we want to see Lucy's on there, and maybe she could give an update on the aggregate.
Yeah, that'd be great. I think then we'll have the quarterly report from Pablo Cedillo, but I think if Lucy phone was on the line, that'd be great.
Okay. Lucy, are you there? I saw you just a second ago.
Catherine, this is Robert. Robert is on the line.
Hey, Robert, welcome, sir. Are you still there, Robert?
We can't hear you, Robert.
Yes, I'm back now. I'm sorry. I dropped off there for a minute, and I apologize for dropping off earlier during the previous agenda item. So it looks like Lucy was appointed for the Food Policy Council. She was going to do a presentation on the aggregate, and I do believe Daniel has the presentation online. I'm not sure it's showing up yet, but there it goes.
What's the problem with the commercial dealing with that imagine on
Can you hear me?
Yes, is this Lucy?
Yes, this is Lucy. Sorry about that.
No, you're fine.
Is Robert on as well?
Yeah, you're both actually on, I believe, right now. So I think they were bringing the presentation up.
Oh, great.
Sorry about that. I'm having some little bit of issues here. Just give me 1 minute.
Yeah. Yeah, I do have the logo, right? About what of these companies that have meeting. Yeah.
Mr. Chair, can you have somebody background, mute their background, or if we're not ready for the presentation, let's move on, please? I just hear a lot of background noise. I don't know if they're ready or not.
Okay, it sounds like they're bringing it up now.
Yeah, that's it. I can talk to it now.
Okay, great. Go ahead, Lisa.
Thank you, commissioners, for having a moment to receive an update about the aggregate program. If you could advance the slide. The aggregate was launched in the fall to connect food producers with food buyers in the community. And this is an innovative platform that uses profiles in a profile setting to populate a map that I will give a little bit more explanation about in a minute. Advance the slide. So there are a couple features of the aggregate website. As I mentioned, there's a searchable food community map, which I'll get into. There are also the profiles for food producers, food buyers, and resource providers. And there's a short film that you can watch on your own time, just giving a little bit of the heritage of agriculture in northern New Mexico. Next slide. We also have a section on the front page for news and events. So this is notices from the community about land that is available for exchange and that can be cultivated. There's also training opportunities and places where people can sell produce. So this is updated regularly. Next slide. Again, these are the features. So you can advance again. Thank you. So quickly, I just wanted to walk you through how the searchable food community map works. It's an actual map, and on the left side, there are searchable items. So for food producers, you can search for different products that you're looking for. Next slide. So I'm going to run you through an example looking for greens. So I clicked greens and pressed search, and these were markers that came up. Next slide. Each of those markers is associated with a profile of a food producer, not just in Santa Fe County, but in the region. And so then next slide. So then that would bring up all of the profile information about that particular provider. And you can see it there in abbreviated form, or you could go and see the full profile on the next slide. So that's the page that the actual producer has. Go on to the next slide, please. So we've been working with the Santa Fe Food Policy Council's Food Security Working Group, in addition to this, which has the city and other food distributors, also the eShip program, which Aaron Ortigoza, who was the brains, I guess, behind the aggregate program. We've all been working together to make a response, a proposed response to how we can secure food, both purchasing it and distributing it to our whole community in need. The food community map, as I'll show you in a minute, demonstrates the potential of utilizing all of these resources. So if you can go to the next slide. This is the spreadsheet that, as the working group, we've been populating, and it has the food suppliers, possible places for aggregation and distribution, possible preparation locations with kitchens, ways that we could transport those items, and funding and labor sources. So as a group, I'd say there's about 15 people who are regularly on the working group calls, which happen twice a week. We've been populating this, and then Alex Fitzgerald and I have been using this information to make additional profiles on the aggregate. Next slide. So as you can see, these markers show the 3 different kinds of resources that can be viewed on the aggregate website. There's the food producers in green, food buyers in yellow, and then resource providers, I believe. Or sorry, food buyers in orange and resource providers in yellow. And so the functionality of this is that we can list attributes of food buyers, such as meal distribution, food depots, senior centers, places, things that we're looking for in terms of this crisis. And because this is being populated so quickly, and these are the kinds of things that we're trying to utilize as a region, not just for the city or Albuquerque or just the county, we see this as a tool that we can use to analyze what are the key infrastructure and other investments that we could make to help secure food supply and distribution for now during the crisis and beyond. Next slide. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucy, for your presentation. Is there any questions from the commissioners?
Commissioner, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Hanson, yeah.
Thank you, Lucy, very much for the brief presentation. What kind of response are you getting from the farmers right now with this coronavirus?
We are hearing from farmers through the working group, the Food Policy Council working group, that they are ready to plant and they are wanting to step up as local heroes who can help solve this problem in the near and long term. They do want to have some sort of security in knowing that what they're planting and producing now will be purchased. And so we have put together as the Food Policy Council a short list of ways that the county could support this work, which I don't think I'm presenting now or soon, but I think they're ready to go ahead. They just want some support, funding and otherwise from us.
So, Mr. Chair, what kind of funding do you think do we have in the pipeline? Lucy?
Sorry, were you addressing me?
Yes.
What kind of funding do we have in the pipeline? I can't answer that. I'm sorry, Commissioner.
It's okay. I appreciate you getting this out in the community and that we begin to connect with the people who are providing food, because it is certainly a way of life in northern New Mexico, and it's important to continue.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Commissioner Hanson. That was a great question. I kind of had something similar that I had constituents ask about how the aggregate was working with the acequias in not only in the valley where my district, but in all of Santa Fe County where there are parciantes that can help in supporting utilizing their network to move local products and even including hay and livestock.
Commissioner, if I may answer that to the best of my ability, we are definitely still in the marketing phase of this website. The crisis has exponentially increased the awareness and the data on the site, but we're still in the phase of trying to partner and collaborate and build this out to the highest capacity so that we can activate all the resources that are available to us.
Great. Glad to hear that. Any other questions or comments from commissioners?
Mr. Chair, this is Commissioner Garcia.
Yes, Commissioner Garcia?
Just really quick, thank you for the presentation. Can you just be sure to coordinate, communicate with the schools, Farm to Table, the City of Santa Fe, nonprofit organizations, everybody that is actually out there to help out the community, to just all work together and all communicate and get things done for the betterment of the situations happening? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Commissioner Garcia. Any other questions or comments from any commissioners? Manager Miller? No? Okay, well, thank you, Lucy. We really appreciate the presentation, and thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you all for your support.
Congratulations. And a congratulations, is that correct, Lucy?
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, so we're going to go and move on to item number 12, and it's informative reports. This is going to be the quarterly report on at county correctional facilities. Pursuant 2019, Chapter 194, HB 364, and I believe we have Pablo Cedillo.
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. Pablo Cedillo, Public Safety Director. As you're well aware, House Bill 364 went into effect on July 1st of 2019. This is our third report out of restricted housing. Basically, restricted housing tells you who goes in, how long they stay, and for what reason. And you have to report out the age, gender, ethnicity as well. And I understand that Commissioner Hanson had some questions on this report, and I'm here to respond to those questions.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Yes, Commissioner Hanson, you're on.
I was trying to pull it up, but I can't seem to pull up the report. It looks like that most of the people who go into restricted housing come in and then are released out of the jail. Is that true?
Not entirely, Commissioner Hanson. If you look at the report, it gives the time that they go in and the time that they're released out of restrictive housing. So the date says date release is when they get released out of restricted housing. The longest time an individual has stayed in there from this quarter right now is 13 days.
Okay. I just wanted to hear what you had to say about the restricted housing and how it was moving along.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Hanson, I can tell you that just by this list here, and you have individuals who are here for 13 days as the longest for the last quarter, I think that the administration is doing an excellent job in giving the appropriate time plus the required 2 hours that they're out of their cell. And there's a lot of communication between our staff and those individuals in restricted housing. Therefore, as you see, 13 days is the longest. Before, there used to be people, not in our facility, but this is one of the reasons they drafted up this House Bill 364, because individuals were staying in restrictive housing for a long periods of time.
Okay, did you have any other questions, Commissioner Hanson?
No, thank you very much.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, this is Rudy. Commissioner Garcia, I have some questions.
Commissioner Garcia?
For an individual that actually has unfortunately been in the place, is restricted housing called? Is that a different term for lockdown? For you're in the cell for 20? You're in a segregated area for 23 hours a day. Is that a different word for that now? Lockdown in the dungeon and is that what segregated housing is now?
Commissioner, Chairperson Roy Ball, Commissioner Garcia, those are antiquated terms. Don't like to use them. We call it special management units. The House Bill 364 calls it restrictive housing.
So I'm talking the same lingo as into back in the days. This was called when you're locked up for 23 hours a day in a cell by yourself, and you get out 1 or 2 hours a day and you see daylight. Is that correct?
Are you talking, Commissioner Garcia, are you talking about back in the day or are you talking currently?
I'm talking to you. If somebody goes into restricted housing, does that mean you can be locked up in a cell for 22, 23 hours a day and not see any other population, not see daylight, not see a window, not see a guard for 23 hours a day? Is that restricted housing?
Chairperson Roy Ball, Commissioner Garcia, again, that's antiquated. They do have windows in their cells. They have plenty of communication, programming in there as well. They do get out 2.5 hours plus out of their cell to shower, to recreate, and to just kind of walk around in the pod. Then they're secured back in their unit, into their cells at that time. But the communication is always there with our case managers, with our administration, with the officers. So we don't throw them in a cell and throw away the key and never talk to them again until the next day. Again, those are all antiquated scenarios and terms.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the terminology, and it's to kind of like throw them in the cell, throw away the key, and because where this is coming to fruition is for the general public to understand is in Doña Ana, there's an inmate that was locked up for months and months and months and months, and this is why the state legislature actually passed this bill because, like I said, there was an individual that was there in Doña Ana jail, not prison, jail, and he was forgotten for many months. And so they just have a little bit of concern, and I think Santa Fe County is doing a great job as how we incarcerate and how we handle individuals get incarcerated, because they are human beings as well, just like we all are. And I just want to make sure for the record that everybody in that facility or any other facility is taken care of, because as a policy makers, we need to make sure that everybody's treated equally. So that's just my whole point for the record. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Garcia.
Chairperson Roy Ball, and thank you, Commissioner Garcia. Like I said, if you look at the log here for the last 3 months, 13 days is the longest time somebody spent there, and you're absolutely right. Our obligation and responsibility is the custodial care, not only the custodial care providing the necessities, but also providing that extra care for them, for anybody in SMU or in restrictive housing.
Thank you, Mr. Cedillo, because just for the record, once again, can anybody out there realize what it's like to be in an isolated cell for 13 days, and you only get 2 hours to go out and exercise, do whatever you need to do, and you get fed? I just want to make sure if there's an individual or individuals out there that we don't want to deal with this right now, but if there's somebody out there that needs some care or help or something, we need to, as policymakers, we need to help out those individuals. There's no way that somebody should be locked up for 13 days in 4x4 cell. But I just want to make that for the record, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Cedillo.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, is there any other questions from commissioners? Mr. Cedillo?
I just want to thank the County Commission for taking the time to review this quarterly report and ask the questions that they needed to ask.
Thank you, Mr. Cedillo, and thank you for your time today, sir.
No problem. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, this is
Yes.
Commissioner Garcia again. Just really
Commissioner
quick,
Garcia.
Mr. Cedillo, can you just give us a little 1 minute, 2 minute, as in our accreditation for a jail facility? Because we are one of the top three 2 jails in New Mexico, out of 33 counties that are accredited. So you can just give us a little quick brief as to, for the general public out there to understand as to, we're actually, for lack of better terms, we're actually a good jail. We take care of our population that are in.
Chair Revolt and Commissioner Garcia, you're absolutely correct on that. We pride ourselves on providing quality care to the inmates and to the staff as well. That's our responsibility and obligation. We just went through an accreditation, a re-accreditation, our third one since 2012. We passed with 100% on everything. There was a couple issues that action plans were already put in place. We submitted the action plans back to the New Mexico Association of Counties accreditation team. We haven't heard back from them as yet. They're supposed to be back at our facility within 60 days, I believe it was 60 or 90 days. And that should be coming up pretty soon to kind of look at our actions plans once more and that we kind of enhanced and implemented. I'm very confident that we'll get our reaccreditation, our third one since 2012. I take pride in the staff, the administration over there and what they do. It's a very difficult job. A lot of people don't understand the complexities of a correctional institution, especially a detention center, when you have a lot of individuals coming in and out of the facility. Our staff does a really good job. I'm very proud to be part of this for the County of Santa Fe.
Thank you, Mr. Cedillo. Mr. Chair, just so the general public understands, the county commission, as policymakers, we go out there at least once a year to tour our jail. And when I say our jail, it's not a county commission jail. It's not Santa Fe County jail. It's actually every taxpayer in Santa Fe County pays for that facility out there. So as policymakers, we need to make sure that our staff and all the staff that works out there are actually credible, and they do an excellent job there. So I just wanted to make that for the record because it's the community's jail. It's not just Santa Fe County jails, the city's jail. It's all of our jail. Well, thank you, Mr. Cedillo. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cedillo, and thank you, Commissioner Garcia. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and move on to our next item number. It's item number 8, matters from the county commissioners. Are there any commissioners? I'm just going to go through the line. So I'm going to start with Commissioner Hanson.
I don't have any updates, except for that there is a SWAMA meeting on Thursday at 5 o'clock. And SWAMA is a solid waste management agency. And they have, I guess this is an update, they have reduced the hours at BERT to 8 to 4:45. And they have asked that only people bring essential items to the BERT facility. They were being overrun by people not wanting to stay home. I know it's difficult for people to stay home at this particular time, but the governor has requested this stay-at-home order. And so non-essential items that will be not accepted are trash from spring cleaning, trash from cleanup of garage and backyard, waste from remodeling projects, bulk items such as old furniture, mattress and appliances, tires, recycled material, including glass bottles, household hazardous waste, and e-waste. So if people can just please hold on to these things until we can come out of this stay-at-home order and our numbers start going down. That is the main thing that we have to have happen for is to be over, is to start having our numbers go down. So that's what I wanted to share. Thank you.
And
Do you have an announcement or anything to share with us today?
yes, Chair. Here in El Dorado, it's usually kind of sleepy, but in some ways it's a good thing. I've been driving around and with all the new we have a new trail that has been installed recently, and a lot of people are taking the opportunity to just get around on our trails. And thanks to the Santa Fe County. I hope everybody is taking the opportunity to downshift and take the opportunity to appreciate what we do have. And that's my take. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Moreno. Great words. I'm going to go to Commissioner Hamilton.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have very much to share. I did want to mention that the first Saturday in April, a couple of weeks ago, we made a valiant attempt to do Coffee with the Commish virtually and had some success, but some real difficulties because of just first time trotting something out that we were going to use that broadly. It was pretty early in the month. So I wanted to both apologize to all my constituents and all the people who were really looking forward to keeping this going for that technical glitch, but we will be doing it again the first Saturday in May, which is the 2nd. I also wanted to thank Tessa Joe and Daniel Fresquez and Tina Salazar for really working through on that Saturday and making all the fixes that did bring us live. So obviously there were challenges doing everything virtually, but there was also a lot of public interest. So we will definitely try again.
Thank you, Hamilton. Okay, so Commissioner Garcia.
Just really, well, we kind of said a few important things, but just everybody be safe out there and just take precaution. We're actually one community, one government, one union, one world, and let's get over this and everybody be safe. And thank you for everybody that's participated and do what we all got to do. Be safe. Thank you all.
Thank you, Commissioner Garcia. I also wanted to bring up myself. We had some things that just to bring to everybody's attention. I have had a few calls on trash again, unfortunately, getting dumped in areas. I did actually witness somebody throwing branches in one of the rivers, and so I know that I've gotten a couple of calls relative to that. I don't know if some of the trash that's being thrown is because people at this point can't afford to buy the punch tickets, or if it's just a trend that's getting worse. But I wanted to see if there could be something we could put in place to consider if somebody has lost their job and can't afford to buy a punch ticket, and if there's any kind of help out there that might be able to allow them to throw their trash for free or at a prorated amount, and especially if they can show that they aren't working right now and in a hard time due to this COVID-19 pandemic. So I don't know if there's a possibility or if we've thought about that or not. But I think it's something that, might get worse if people can't afford to throw their trash. The other thing is, and I don't know if that's something that Manager Miller might be able to talk to a little bit and see if there's anything that we might be able to do to help with that type of situation.
Mr. Chair, I have a response to you.
Okay, Manager.
Actually, just trying to work with Greg to develop two policies for alleviating strain on our county residents. And one of them is with our utility bills, making sure that we waive any penalties and interest for late payment, and that we don't have any shutoffs as long as people contact us and get on a payment plan. So that would be one. And then the second is to allow people to go into the transfer stations as long as they have a permit, but we won't punch it. So we use the permits to know that they are actually a county resident. So we would still want them to have a current permit, but we would not punch the card so that their trip is free.
I appreciate that. And I think that's all I had at this point. I do appreciate that, but we're on to other elected officials. I know, and I want to thank the county sheriff. I saw him, he was online earlier. And I'm not sure if there's any other elected officials that were online that would have any kind of announcements that they would like to share. We are on our next item, which is matters from other elected officials. Are there any other elected officials that have comments that they'd like to share on public record? Okay, seeing none, I'm gonna go ahead and close item number 9, matters from other elected officials. And we'll go on to matters from the county attorney. Mr. Attorney Schaefer, can you give us a summary of what we're going into executive session? Yes.
Mr. Chair, we were going to recommend, since it's almost 5 o'clock, that we take a 10-minute break and actually go to the public hearings at 5 and do the matters from the county attorney at the end of the meeting.
Awesome.
Oh, Mr. Chair, you're muted. Could you repeat that?
Yes, I'm fine with going ahead and moving item number 10 down to the bottom for matters from the county attorney. And we'll go ahead and move our public hearings up at 5 o'clock. So if I can get a motion to go into recess, we'll return at 5 o'clock.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Hamilton and a second from Commissioner Garcia. I'm going to go to a roll call vote. Commissioner Hanson?
Yes.
Commissioner Hamilton?
Yes.
Commissioner Moreno?
Yes.
Commissioner Garcia?
Yes.
That's a yes from me as well. So we're going to recess and be back at 5 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you.
So it's 4:51.
Hello?
Is that you, Nate?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm on. They're in executive session, or not in executive. They just took a break for 10 minutes, and then they're going to start our stuff.
Am I on as Nathan CM? I can't tell. I think I am.
You know what, Nate? I can hear us on the YouTube account, so.
Oh. Okay.
Okay, I wanted to just see if we had all the commissioners back. I can see Commissioner Hansen's back
And Commissioner Hamilton.
and Commissioner Hamilton, okay. Commissioner Moreno, are you back? Commissioner Moreno? How about Commissioner Garcia?
Back. Moreno.
Okay. Okay, Commissioner Moreno. Commissioner Garcia, are you back, sir? Commissioner Garcia, are you back? Okay,
I believe he was signing off and signing back on to see if his webcam would work.
Oh, okay. We'll give him a couple minutes then.
It looks like he just signed back on.
Okay, great. Okay, Commissioner Garcia, are you back on, sir? Commissioner Garcia.
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
You are? Okay, I got you now. Thank you, sir. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started on our come out of our recess and go ahead and get started with item number 11. And these are public hearings. It's after 5 o'clock, so we're okay to start with them. The first one that we're going to do is 11A. This is case
Mr. Chair.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Mr. Chair, this is Greg Schaefer, the county attorney.
Attorney Schaefer?
We've been contacted by the applicant's agent who has requested that the two matters scheduled to be heard this evening be tabled until May. And if I could ask either the agent or Miss Ellis Green to confirm that for the record, I would appreciate it. But that's my understanding of where we are now with regard to these two cases.
Okay, is the agent Mr. Martinez? Mr. Martinez, I think you're on mute.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Hold on.
We can hear you now, sir.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Again, we're in a quandary over here because we've received over the last couple of days a number of petitions against the development. So, and these are petitions that we feel that are, a lot of them are unwarranted because, we have been involved in this project for close to 15 years. So we have, that are coming back. We find ourselves in a situation where if we're going to fight a battle that we're not, don't have a chance to win, our best bet is to table and try to negotiate with the neighborhood groups and others so that we can be on a positive position versus a negative position. And that's a real big concern on us because a lot of the comments that are coming back at us are personal attacks against Joe Miller. Mr. Miller is no longer capable due to health concerns to defend himself against these negative attacks that are, some of them are pretty vicious and some of them are downright wrong because what happened back in 2012, 2013, 14, they're telling us that we're 2020 and it's a whole different game, Well, again, like I say, this scenario has just gotten harder and harder because without this extension, we will lose our development rights, and we're not willing to accept that. The tabling was based on our attorney Ron Van Amberg's request that maybe it's a good idea that we table for a month so that we can see if we can sit down with these community organizations, which we know is not possible because of the current virus conditions. But what it does is it puts us in a quandary because we don't want our projects to die. We want our projects to continue. The concern that I have is this is about affordable housing. This is about market rate housing. And a lot of the concerns that we're getting are people that are dissatisfied with modular homes, which were approved based on our previous approvals. So it shouldn't be an issue for us now that the homes are in place, that our people are happy, they're They love their homes. And because they're not equal or greater than the homes that are around us, they're being targeted as affordable houses that don't fit into this community. That's a big concern for us because I know the county's attempt is not to discourage affordable housing or market rate affordable housing, but to allow us to move forth and continue with what we think is a product that is needed in the community of El Dorado, where the average price of home is close, well over 400,000 in some cases. Our homes are not that high, and what we're doing is I've got people that are lined up that are willing to talk to the commission and say, we live in a modular home, we live in this community, and we are very proud to have this opportunity to be able to do what they have done. How well now the opposition, which again, like I say, is very negative because they don't like Joe Miller, they don't like modular homes. They call them mobile home communities, which they're not. They're modular home communities. Our efforts to keep our projects in order are so dependent on this ability to get this extension. The extension that we're requesting is based on the fact that for 2.5 years, we have been working diligently to amend an existing approved affordable housing agreement plan that was approved by Commissioner Stefanix and was recorded in the board with the county clerk's office. That was pretty much set in place. That's how we got our first phases of the developments approved. Now we're told that our affordable housing has to be changed. So the effort to change it, we made an application for Spirit Wind in July of 2018. Development fees were paid. Everything went out to state agencies. And now we're told, sorry, the affordable housing agreement and plan are not acceptable. We have to modify them. So for 2 years that this delay has been caused, we're still waiting for a final word on what are we going to do. Again, affordable housing is vital, but it's impacting us because this community, the community of El Dorado, does not want affordable housing. They don't want affordable market rate housing. It's called not in my backyard. They only want what's comparable with what they have and nothing more. Again, it's really sad when you see some of the comments that are personal attacks against Mr. Miller, who cannot defend himself. So we're finding ourselves in a quandary. So should we table and continue to try to negotiate with these people? I'm willing to do it, but when you have that negative mentality, what it does is it destroys the ability to come before you, the Board of County Commission, and get a fair treatment for these development projects.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez. I do have, I wanted to go to our county attorney. In this situation where the client would like to table, I don't believe that we need to go to public comment. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, this is Rudy. I have a question, please.
Commissioner Garcia?
Just really quick before Mr. Attorney Schaefer gets on the call, I have a question as into, I don't know about, I don't want to say this, I don't know about stereotyping the community of El Dorado, so on and whatnot, because back in the day, the county code said a dwelling unit is a dwelling unit, and so I just want to make sure if the applicant tables this, that's not going to be held against the applicant as into, because he tabled it trying to work with the community. He's not going to, his expiration date for his zoning will not expire. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, I believe there are two questions that were posed. First, does the board have to take public comment?
I'm sorry, Mr. Schaefer. Can somebody mute their background noise, please?
Take public comment on a request to table an item. Both the request to table as well as the decision to take public comment would be at the discretion of the Board of County Commissioners. So the short answer is no. I don't believe that anything in our regulations would require the board to take public comment on the request table, if that's the board's desire. With regard to the second question of whether or not by asking that the case be tabled for a month, that would be somehow used as an admission against the applicant in future proceedings on the request for an extension. Commissioner Garcia, I believe the answer is no. The applicant is, as I understand it, requesting time to try and meet with neighborhood community groups to understand and potentially try to address their concerns. But no, I don't believe that their desire and willingness to do so would be an admission that would be used against them in future proceedings. I hope that answers your question, Commissioner
Chair, I have a
Garcia.
technical question.
Yes, Attorney Schaefer, I appreciate the answer to the question. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Hamilton? Did we lose the chair?
No, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I can now.
Yeah. Okay, I go ahead.
I thought in the materials that that this extension or the current extension expires at the end of April. So at the end of this month, and so I mean, and I could be wrong. I have no problem with tabling. I think it's for a good reason. But if we table for a month, will we be coming back after the expiration? And do we have to make some sort of note, take some, so that that is not held against the applicant?
Mr. Chair, thank you, Commissioner Hamilton. That's the question that I have is into. I don't want the applicant to say, we table for a month or two trying to work the committee. Now you have to start all over again. So, good question, Commissioner. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yes. Is this Commissioner Moreno?
Yes, thank you for letting me in. I would support a move to table this matter. The communities are in dialogue, but it is kind of a raw topic, and I would support a postponement.
Okay. Mr. Commissioner for this district. I would like to ask Attorney Schaefer, is Commissioner correct in that this would expire, and could we do an amendment to the motion extending that until it comes back to the BCC?
Mr. Chair, I am informed by the land use administrator that the land use administrator's historic position has been that so long as the application is made prior to expiration of the master plan, that the board has the authority to grant the extension, even though that formal approval may occur after expiration of the master plan. In other words, it's the date of application that is controlling rather than the date of the board's actual decision. I don't believe that interpretation is foreclosed by any language in the SLDC relative to approved master plans. And I think that concept is pretty clearly and expressly set forth in other provisions concerning preliminary plats and final plats. So again, the short answer is, I think it's the time of the application rather than the action of the board that would be controlling. I think that's defensible under the SLDC, and I'm informed that it is consistent with the land use administrator's actual administration of the SLDC.
So, Mr. Chair, this is Commissioner Garcia. So once again, Greg, so if we table this today and he comes back in 2 or 3 months, he still has his preliminary or final plat does not expire, correct?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Garcia, I think that would be a permissible interpretation should the Board of County Commissioners adopt it. And we are dealing here with a master plan extension, not a plat extension.
Correct.
So I just want to make it clear, because I just want to make sure if we do table this, that the applicant still has the ability to come forward after working with the residents, that he can still get an extension if the commission grants that.
That would be my understanding as well.
That would be my understanding. I believe that's what Mr. Attorney Schaefer has indicated.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chair, did we actually have a motion from Commissioner Moreno?
No, well, he said he did support it, but if you would like to make a motion, Commissioner Moreno?
Well, I will so move.
So,
Second.
so we have a
Mr. Chair,
motion to go ahead if you could.
Just for discussion, this is Commissioner Garcia. So at the applicant's request for tabling to work with the residents, I would support the applicant's request so long as it actually does not mess or interrupt his extension.
Okay.
Okay, and I just want to say that I think it's commendable that they would have more outreach and be willing to do that with the community. So I think it's a good reason to table this item and bring it back in May.
Or maybe even June.
It would be up to the probably to our client, or to the client that's bringing this forward. Is Mr. Martinez still on the line?
To speak with members of the community. The hard part about it is it's hard to talk to 100 different people, but I will go to the homeowners associations, and I will, again, the issue of should I have a public meeting versus should I just do this informally and try to communicate with them? This particular case does not require a public hearing. If I came in and I was asking for a preliminary and final development plan approval, yes, I would be asking for a community meeting because that's what's required. In this particular case, it does not require a public hearing, but I would be more than willing to reach out and express our concerns to the community, hear them out. Again, I can't promise that we're going to satisfy everybody, but I think it's an effort that I really need to take forth because it's going to kill a project that has been in the making for many, many years, and a lot of money has been spent. And right now where we're at, we have people that are waiting on a list to buy lots. But if we're going to go through this, get denied, and have to fight the battle, I'd rather see if I can work with community first. I can see if there's any ability to agree to something. And I don't, again, like I said, it's all about one thing, two things: affordable housing and affordable market rate housing. It's not about can I compete with what they have. It's nothing more than, in today's world, we've got to meet market rate housing that appeals to people that cannot afford the costs that are being paid for in the El Dorado community. And we really believe that we have created this market in the two developments that we've gotten. The homes that are out there, they're modular homes. People are really thrilled. They would love to talk to you. But again, like I say, I got to stop it, and I got to give the community the option to give me a chance to call them, work with them, and see if I can come up with something.
Okay, Mr. Martinez, we really appreciate that. Do you have a timeline? I mean, we talked about May or June. Is there a month that you would prefer?
It's my understanding from talking to the land use administrator that I will come before you guys monthly, and I would have to request a tabling on the next month and then the next month, and I'm entitled to 3 tablings before we would have to move forth. And again, like I tell you, on our part, we're willing to work with the communities. I just don't know what kind of responses I'm going to get. So is next month going to work? I really couldn't say that it's going to work. Is the next month going to work? I would hope that within 2 months, not 30 days to 60 days, that we would have some kind of agreement that is not going to be detrimental to our project.
So Commissioner Moreno, you had the motion earlier. Do you want to table it to a specific, either the first or second BCC meeting in May?
That's looking on the.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Moreno?
Yes, Attorney Schaefer?
Yeah, I would recommend, consistent with the practice described, that this be tabled to the first meeting in May. And then, as the applicant described, if additional tablings are desired, then they can follow the normal process to do that. I think that would be the cleanest way to proceed, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so is that going to be your motion, Commissioner Moreno, to table until May?
Yeah, that'll work.
And your second, Commissioner Garcia, is also with that?
Yes, I'm okay. I think it was Commissioner Hamilton. Commissioner Hanson
Correct,
actually
and
seconded
I'm
it.
fine with that.
So we have a motion and a second. Is under discussion. Are there any other comments from commissioners, concerns?
Nope.
No, okay, seeing. Okay, who was that?
Residents ask a question.
We don't have any public comment.
Okay, we just live in the area, so we thought we would share how much we love the area.
Okay, well, we do have public comment. You'll have that opportunity, yes. Is this Commissioner Garcia?
Just, Mr. Chair, just for the record, on a tabling, there is no public comment, I believe. Mr. Schaefer can correct me if I'm wrong.
No, that's basically what I just said, that we would have public comment in the next time that we come back.
Thank you.
Yes. So we have a motion and a second. I'm going to go to a roll call vote. Commissioner Hanson?
You're muted.
Commissioner Hanson?
Yes.
Okay, Commissioner Hamilton?
Yes.
Commissioner Garcia?
Yes, with all due respect for the commissioner, that's his district, so yes.
Commissioner Moreno?
Yes.
And myself will be yes as well, so it passes unanimously to table until our first meeting in May. Thank you. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you to Commissioner Roybal. And again, like I say, we will pursue this immediately tomorrow and see if I can get in communication with the neighborhood groups.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez.
Mr.
Okay,
Chair, I would just confirm for the record, if I could, that the tabling motion encompassed both cases, case number 20-5010 and case number 20-5020. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to go back to item number 10, and this is a matter from County Attorney Schaefer. Can you give us a brief summary of what we're going into executive session for?
Certainly, Mr. Chair. Before we do that, I would respectfully request that we take care of a housekeeping item under the Open Meetings Act with regard to the March 31st meeting of the Board of County Commissioners. As you may recall, at that meeting, the Board of County Commissioners went into executive session at the end of the meeting and did not reconvene in open session. Instead, the open meeting was adjourned and the board went into executive session. I therefore would respectfully request that someone make a motion to have the minutes of this meeting reflect that the matters discussed during the March 31st, 2020 executive session were limited only to those specified in the motion for closure.
Okay, thank you, Attorney Schaefer. Can I have a motion in that regard?
This is Commissioner Hamilton. I would so move.
Second.
So we have a motion from Commissioner Hamilton and a second from Commissioner Moreno. I'm going to go to a roll call vote. Commissioner Hanson?
Yes.
Commissioner Hamilton?
Yes.
Commissioner Moreno?
Yes.
Commissioner Garcia?
Yes.
And myself, Commissioner Roybal, yes, that's five yeses.
So, Mr. Chair, I would recommend that the Board of County Commissioners do the same thing this evening, which is to move to adjourn the open meeting and to convene executive session to discuss charges of discrimination filed with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission and Human Rights Bureau, as well as the AMIT water rights litigation and Milwaukee Basin Regional Water System. And the statutory grounds for discussing those matters in executive session would be threatened or pending litigation. If a county is or may become a participant as allowed by section 1015(1)(h)(7) 1978 NMSA 1978, and the discussion of the purchase, acquisition, or disposal of real property or water rights as allowed by section 1015(1)(h)(8) NMSA 1978.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Commissioner Hamilton, Hanson?
I move that we go into executive session to discuss items that our attorney, Greg Schaefer, just stated.
I'd second.
We have a
I
motion
assume
from
that we
Commissioner.
will- I assume
Go
that
ahead.
we will close out of an executive session and make the necessary statements next meeting rather than reconvene.
Correct.
I agree.
So we have a motion from Commissioner Hanson and a second from Commissioner Hamilton. I'm going to go to roll call vote. Commissioner Hanson,
Yes.
Commissioner Hamilton,
Yes.
Commissioner Moreno,
Yes.
Commissioner Garcia,
Yes.
and myself, Commissioner Roybal, is a yes. So we have 5 yeses. We're in executive session. Thank you.
Thank you. If everyone who is not involved in executive session would please sign off now, we would very much appreciate it.
Don't